What if I told you Meghan Markle may have secretly recorded members of the royal family, including during the Queen's funeral procession? Not in a documentary, not with consent, but with a device. And what if those recordings weren't just private mementos or raw Netflix footage, but something far darker, something bordering on betrayal, espionage, blackmail? Because now, after years of silence, Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey have started to talk. And what they're revealing, it's enough to shake Buckingham Palace to its foundations. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. They say silence is golden. But in Meghan's case, silence was a cover, a carefully curated lie. And it all came crashing down with one whispered line from Oprah to Tyler Perry during the Queen's funeral. She recorded everything. Let's rewind for a moment. Imagine it. A nation in mourning. Crowds lining the streets of London. The sound of bells tolling. Black veils. Stiff collars. Silent tears. And amidst it all, Meghan Markle, walking slowly behind the Queen's casket, her hands folded, her eyes downcast. But was that grief? Or was it guilt? Because according to multiple insiders, some now confirmed by Oprah herself, Meghan wasn't just attending the Queen's funeral. She was documenting it. Secretly. Illegally. Strategically. But why? What could she possibly gain from it? What would drive a woman, who claimed she was vilified by the palace, to re-enter the lion's den armed not with peace, but with a microphone? And more disturbingly, who helped her do it? Because that's where this story stops being about petty royal gossip and becomes something much more sinister. We're talking covert surveillance, hidden recording devices, backroom deals, and a string of phone calls, one between Tyler Perry and Oprah, that suggests they knew more than they let on. You see, this isn't just about Meghan anymore. This is about trust, about legacy, and about the Queen herself. Because one of the tapes, reportedly labeled funeral_confidential.mp4, includes audio of King Charles, Camilla, and William speaking candidly at the side of the Queen's coffin. Private words, never meant for the public. And yet, somehow, Meghan had them. And she wasn't just listening. She was saving them, archiving them, preparing them. So the question becomes, for what? Why this story matters now? It's easy to write this off as more Sussex soap opera. Another headline. Another tabloid circus. But what if it's not? What if this is the beginning of something much bigger? Because this time, Meghan may have crossed the line from controversial into criminal. Multiple legal experts in both the UK and US have suggested that secretly recording heads of state at a state event, especially on foreign soil, can qualify as a breach of diplomatic law. There are also potential violations of national security laws if the conversation involves sensitive royal protocols or intergovernmental discussions. And then there's the ethical aspect. Recording the Queen's funeral? The very woman she publicly praised? The monarch whose death was supposed to unite a fractured nation? If true, this isn't just about Meghan's judgment. It's about her intention. And according to Oprah's own inner circle, it was planned. Not spontaneous. Not accidental. A move months in the making. Backed by technology, silence, and at least one powerful media ally who now regrets ever getting involved. But let's slow down. Because in a moment, we'll reveal how Tyler Perry, yes, the same man who offered Meghan and Harry his mansion and private jet, was the first to hear one of these recordings. And what he told Oprah the night he heard it. Let's just say, it was the beginning of the end. The timeline no one's talking about. Let's pull the lens back. September 8th, 2022. The day Queen Elizabeth II passed away. At the time, Meghan and Harry were already in the UK for a charity event. They weren't planning to stay long. But then came the news, the Queen was dying. And suddenly, the Sussexes were at Balmoral. Or at least, Harry was. Meghan was reportedly told to stay behind. Royal protocol. Tensions. Logistics. But what if that's not the full story? Multiple sources now suggest Meghan had an agenda for being in the UK during that window. That she had brought certain items with her. Items not typically found in a clutch purse. And according to a former royal aide, who spoke anonymously, Meghan had a handler, helping her navigate protocol loopholes. This handler, they say, was not British, not a royal aide, but rather a media fixer who had previously worked with disgraced Hollywood stars and high-profile lawsuits. This person, it's believed, was the one who arranged access to audio-enhanced wearable tech. Jewelry with hidden microphones, smartwatches capable of real-time uploads, and AI-driven transcription tools. The kind of kit designed not for preservation, but for surveillance. The players in the shadows. At the center of this storm are three people: Meghan, Tyler Perry, and Oprah Winfrey. On the surface, all friends, all allies, all bonded by pain, public scrutiny, and the shared belief that the royal family had wronged them. But privately, fissures were forming. Tyler Perry, by his own admission, had begun to distance himself from Meghan in early 2023. He stopped mentioning her in interviews, stopped posting photos, no joint appearances. Why? He hasn't said publicly. But according to a close business associate, speaking under condition of anonymity, Tyler once said, "There's things you don't come back from." She crossed that line. And Oprah? She was silent, suspiciously so. For a woman who built her empire on truth-telling and empowerment, her refusal to speak on Meghan post 2022 was deafening. But now we know, thanks to a leaked transcript of a private call between Oprah and her own network executive, that Oprah had heard the tapes. And her reaction? This could destroy the monarchy. And Meghan, too. What Meghan stood to gain. Let's not forget, Meghan is nothing if not strategic. She knows media. She knows narrative. She knows the power of the receipts. So if she recorded the royals, knowingly, systematically, what was the goal? Control? Revenge? Insurance? Was it about blackmail? Future negotiations? Leverage for future Netflix deals? Or was it something even darker? Some insiders suggest Meghan had plans for a follow-up documentary. One more personal. One with never-before-heard royal conversations. One that would change how we view the crown. Only problem? She never told Netflix how she got the recordings. And when they found out, executives panicked. Legal pulled out. And that's when the rumors started. FBI inquiries. Palace legal teams. Internal investigations. All triggered by one folder. One file. One secret Meghan couldn't keep forever. The cliffhanger. Because now, for the first time, Tyler Perry and Oprah are speaking. Not through press releases. Not through publicists. But privately. Behind closed doors. With media producers. With attorneys. And what they're saying. It paints a picture of a woman not simply misunderstood or mistreated, but a woman who may have been planning the ultimate betrayal since her first day inside the palace gates. But what was on the first recording? And how did Tyler Perry discover it? The answer shocked even Oprah. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if the person you rescued, the person you gave shelter, privacy, and protection, turned out to be hiding something that could destroy everything you believed in? That's the question that's haunted Tyler Perry ever since the tapes surfaced. Because for all the public sees, a billionaire media mogul, a trusted friend of Meghan and Harry, the man who opened his $18 million Beverly Hills estate to them when the palace allegedly slammed its doors shut. Behind the scenes, Tyler Perry was unraveling a secret he never asked to carry. It started with a knock, a call, then a cry, and then a file. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the beginning. The moment Tyler said yes to Meghan's desperate request. The call that changed everything. March 2020. The world is reeling from the rise of a global pandemic. Countries are locking down. Flights are grounded. Borders are closing. And in Los Angeles, Tyler Perry's phone lights up with a number he doesn't recognize. He picks up. The voice on the other end is soft, measured, but anxious. It's Meghan. She thanks him for a note he'd written months earlier, a private message of support during her pregnancy with Archie. A few kind lines about strength, struggle, and staying grounded. Now, she says, she and Harry need a place to stay. Quietly, privately, somewhere safe, far from royal eyes, and even farther from the press. Tyler doesn't hesitate. He offers them his mansion in Montecito, fully staffed, gated, and secure. No questions asked, he says. And for a time, that was enough. The world assumed they were rebuilding, licking their wounds. But what really happened behind the gates of Tyler's home was something far more calculated. Because Meghan didn't just bring a suitcase and a baby. She brought a plan. The mansion as a fortress or a studio. By all accounts, Tyler Perry's house was a sanctuary. Gated entrances. Private security. No prying eyes. But it was also wired to the teeth with internal security systems, cameras, mics, server backups. Some for safety. Some, not so much. Inside that mansion, Meghan and Harry reportedly spent hours filming self-recorded video diaries, their voices echoing through the halls late into the night. Notes were taken. Memory logs were saved. Tyler thought it was part of the healing, until it wasn't. Because weeks after the Oprah interview aired, Tyler began getting anonymous emails. They contained snippets of audio, clips of Harry, clips of Meghan, and, most worryingly, clips from conversations Tyler had with Meghan privately, ones that were never meant to be public, conversations that happened inside his home. So how were they recorded? How did someone get access? And why were they being sent to him? I think I've made a mistake. Tyler Perry is a man known for control. His studios are tightly run, his scripts airtight, his public image carefully crafted. But according to one of his producers, he was visibly shaken when he first played the audio. He had welcomed Meghan in, believed her, and now his words, his support, had been captured, filed, and possibly used without consent. He reached out to Oprah immediately. The call between them, sources say, was short. "You need to hear something," Tyler said. "Is it about Meghan?" Oprah replied, "Worse. It's about what she did in my house." He sent her the clip, a short segment, a conversation where Meghan allegedly asked Tyler if he would be willing to host a follow-up interview, one that would be secretly recorded for legal leverage, in case Harry ever switched sides. Tyler's response: laughter, nervous, uncomfortable. "You're joking," he said on the tape. "No," Meghan responded. "You have no idea what they're capable of." The Oprah shift. Oprah has always been cautious. She's built her legacy on truth, but she's also built it on protection. Protection of her brand, her image, her influence. After hearing the tape, Oprah reportedly went silent for almost 48 hours. And then she started asking questions. She called her producers, legal teams, technical experts. She wanted to know, could Meghan have recorded more? Could there be other tapes, ones involving royals, ones taken without consent? That's when Tyler dropped the second bombshell, the folder. A week later, Tyler received a USB drive in an unmarked envelope. No return address, no note, just one word written on the drive itself in black marker. Crownfall. Inside were 3 audio files. One from Meghan's time in Frogmore Cottage, one from a private dinner in Beverly Hills with a British media executive, and the third, from the Queen's funeral. Tyler didn't even finish playing it. He forwarded it to Oprah. That's when her team started to really panic. Because the file wasn't just audio, it was encrypted metadata, time-stamped, geotagged, verified. It had been recorded from inside the Abbey, during a private, off-camera conversation between King Charles and Prince William. And Meghan? Her voice was crystal clear. She was right there, not speaking, just listening, silently. The breaking point. Tyler Perry has always been loyal. To his friends, to his causes, to his convictions. But this crossed the line. According to multiple insiders, Tyler began cutting ties. Quietly, methodically. He removed himself from joint projects with Meghan's PR team. He declined an invitation to attend a Netflix screening featuring Harry and Meghan's documentary. And most tellingly, he pulled out of a private roundtable Oprah had organized, one that included high-profile Black business leaders and Meghan as a featured guest. When pressed by colleagues, Tyler allegedly responded, "I can't support someone who records people in my house without telling them. That's not empowerment. That's espionage." What did Meghan know? Here's where things get complicated. Some claim Meghan never meant for the recordings to be used maliciously, that she was protecting herself, that she had been burned too many times. Others, not so sure. They point to a pattern. Private phone calls leaked, letters to her father made public after being accidentally misplaced. Private palace discussions later turned into Netflix content. And now, funeral recordings? If Meghan didn't mean to betray trust, why were the files labeled, sorted, and backed up to an encrypted server based in Germany? Why was her team negotiating with a private documentary distributor before the Queen had even passed? And why was Tyler Perry, her biggest supporter, turning his back? The fallout begins. Tyler Perry's circle began to buzz. Agents, directors, legal reps. Everyone wanted to know, was Meghan building a media empire or a digital arsenal? Was this about truth-telling or strategic positioning? And most importantly, What was she planning to do with the recordings next? That's when Tyler made one final call to someone at Netflix, a producer he trusted. And when he asked if they had heard the funeral tape, the reply was chilling. We did, but that's not the worst one. Then what is? Tyler asked. The one she made of the Queen, in Balmoral, before she died. Cliffhanger. Because if that tape exists, if Meghan Markle truly recorded the Queen's final moments, without her knowledge, without consent, then this story isn't just scandalous, it's catastrophic. And the person who confirms it next is Oprah Winfrey herself. What would it take for Oprah Winfrey, the queen of composed candor, the architect of America's trust, to finally say, enough? What could possibly make a woman who built a global empire on discretion and dignity suddenly step away from the very person she once defended with everything she had? 2 words, the tape. Not just any tape, the tape from Balmoral. And the moment Oprah heard it, something inside her shifted. She wasn't just disappointed. She wasn't just betrayed. She was horrified. Because Meghan hadn't just crossed a line. She had erased it completely. The beginning of the unraveling. Let's rewind. March 2021. The world watches as Oprah conducts the interview that shatters royal silence. Meghan and Harry, seated under a lush pergola in California sunlight, drop bombshell after bombshell. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. They didn't want him to be a prince. There were concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be. It was dramatic, devastating, electrifying. And Oprah? Oprah stood at the epicenter. Calm, composed, in control. She didn't challenge. She listened. She gave them space. And in doing so, she handed Meghan one of the most powerful platforms in modern media history. That trust was sacred, which is why what happened next, behind the scenes, cut even deeper. The call that changed Oprah's legacy. September 2022. The Queen is gone. The world is in mourning. And Oprah is silent. No follow-up interview. No comment. No statement. Privately, she's distancing herself. At first, it seems like a strategic decision. Let the moment breathe. Don't step into the funeral frenzy. But the real reason? She had already heard something she couldn't unhear. A private call from Tyler Perry. 3 audio files. One of them from inside Westminster Abbey. Another? From Balmoral. And the third? From a quiet conversation between Meghan and a palace staffer that was never meant to be public. Yet somehow ended up transcribed, time-stamped, and cataloged in a file titled monarchy_2022_raw. When Oprah pressed Tyler for more, he hesitated. But eventually, he said the words that would haunt her. She didn't stop, Oprah, not even for the Queen. The Balmoral bombshell. Here's what we now know. At some point before Queen Elizabeth II passed away, Meghan Markle visited Balmoral Castle. While Harry rushed to Scotland amid concerns about the Queen's health, Meghan remained in London. Or so we thought. But according to 2 separate security sources and one former palace insider, Meghan may have had brief access to a room in Balmoral just hours before the Queen's passing. A room where a private conversation occurred. One with Camilla, Charles, and a senior aide. One that was never supposed to be recorded. But the voice on the tape? Soft. Mechanical. Almost too perfect. A hidden device. Picking up every word. Every hesitation. Every sigh. And then, clear as crystal, Meghan's voice in the background. Not speaking. Just listening. Oprah's private screening. When Oprah heard the Balmoral tape, she was with 3 people. A legal advisor. A producer. And her longtime friend Gayle King. The room was silent. For 5 minutes, no one said a word. Because what was captured on that tape wasn't just scandalous. It was sacred. A dying monarch. A grieving family. An unfiltered moment of raw, human emotion. And in the middle of it, a breach so staggering, so deliberate, that Oprah reportedly stood up mid-playback and walked out of the room. She didn't say a word. She just stood, covered her mouth with her hand, and disappeared into the hallway. When she returned, she simply said, "This is too far." The turning point. Oprah confronts Meghan. Insiders say Oprah didn't go public right away. She didn't want to start a media war. She wanted the truth. So she called Meghan directly. What followed was a conversation that left even Oprah's closest friends shaken. According to someone familiar with the call, the tone was frigid but formal. Oprah asked, "Did you know you were being recorded at Balmoral?" Meghan paused, then responded, That depends what you mean by recorded. That was it. The moment Oprah knew the trust was broken, she ended the call shortly after, reportedly saying, "Thank you for your time. I won't be following up." She hung up. And she never called back. Gayle King speaks out. Weeks later, in a subtle yet powerful segment on CBS, Gayle King made a statement that went largely unnoticed. But in light of recent events, it takes on new meaning. Sometimes, even people we love surprise us, and not always in good ways. Truth has a way of coming out. She didn't name names, but insiders knew. The message was clear. The Oprah camp was pulling away, fast, and Meghan? She was losing her biggest shield. Behind closed doors. The OWN network fallout. After Oprah's silent retreat from Meghan, things got serious. Her network, OWN, launched a quiet audit. Internal memos were reviewed. Communication with Meghan's team was paused. Joint projects were indefinitely shelved. And most notably, a highly anticipated follow-up interview, meant to celebrate the Sussexes' first year of freedom, was canceled without explanation. Why? Because by then, OWN's legal team had confirmed the funeral recordings were real. And even more disturbingly, there was reason to believe at least one of the devices used had been provided by someone within Oprah's own extended media network. Whether knowingly or not, Oprah's team may have been used as a funnel for tech that violated royal privacy. And Oprah? She was furious. Not just at Meghan, but at herself. Private emails leaked. In late 2023, an anonymous source leaked fragments of emails believed to be between Oprah and her legal advisors. In one email, Oprah reportedly wrote, "I believed her. I defended her. I platformed her. But this is not advocacy. It's sabotage." Another email included this line. "She made me complicit in something I didn't even know was happening." And the most damning of all, she recorded the Queen, and she knew she did it. Why Oprah chose silence? Until now. For over a year, Oprah said nothing publicly. Not a single word about Meghan. Not a hint about the tapes. Some thought she was protecting herself. Others believed she was hoping it would all blow over. But now, with public pressure mounting and legal inquiries circling, Oprah has begun sharing her story, quietly, through trusted intermediaries. She's not doing press tours. She's not writing exposés. She's doing something far more deliberate. She's verifying the truth. And she's doing it behind the scenes, building a case, protecting her legacy, and preparing, according to sources, for a documentary of her own, one that won't tell Meghan's version of events, but Oprah's. The cliffhanger. Because while Oprah may be speaking in whispers now, she's not done, not by a long shot. And the next voice you'll hear won't be hers. It'll be from inside the royal inner circle, a man who once called Meghan a sister, but now calls her something else entirely. And what he reveals will make the Queen's funeral recording look like child's play. What if the most explosive part of this story isn't who was recorded, but how it may have been done? Not with a boom mic, not with a camera crew, but with something so small, so ordinary, that no one would ever think to question it. A bracelet, a brooch, a watch. And that's where the whispers begin. Because the moment Oprah pulled back and Tyler Perry cut ties, a new conversation started circulating quietly among lawyers, tech experts, and palace security veterans. Was the royal family secretly recorded? And if so, by what means? Let's be very clear before we go any further. There has been no public court ruling, no official criminal charge, and no verified law enforcement confirmation that Meghan Markle committed a crime. What you're about to hear is based on allegations, insider accounts, expert analysis, and leaked conversations that are now being discussed behind closed doors. But here's the problem. Too many details line up. And once you see the pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. The question no one wanted to ask. Royal protection officers are trained for everything. Explosives, stalkers, drones, foreign intelligence threats. But one thing they're not trained to expect? A family member. Especially not one dressed in mourning black, walking solemnly behind a coffin, shielded by protocol, grief, and tradition. According to multiple former palace security consultants, the Queen's funeral represented a perfect storm. Dozens of heads of state, tight schedules, limited physical searches due to decorum, and strict rules against intrusive screening of senior royals and close family. In other words, if someone wanted to record a private conversation that day, That would have been the moment. So the question becomes, could it have happened without anyone noticing? Several independent surveillance experts say yes. Easily. The technology that changed everything. Let's talk about modern recording tech. This isn't 2005. You no longer need wires, bulky transmitters, or blinking red lights. Today's consumer-grade devices can record hours of high-quality audio, sync automatically to cloud servers, be embedded in jewelry or clothing, be controlled remotely via phone, delete themselves after upload. One former intelligence contractor, now working in private cybersecurity, explained it like this. If you wanted to record audio discreetly at a high-profile event, the tech exists. And it's not exotic. It's commercially available. So when palace staff later raised concerns about unusual device interference picked up near restricted areas during funeral rehearsals, a few people took note. Most ignored it. Until the whispers began. The jewelry question. One detail keeps resurfacing. Meghan's accessories. In the days following the funeral, online forums and royal watchers began dissecting every photograph. Not maliciously, curiously. One item in particular caught attention. A piece of jewelry Meghan wore repeatedly during sensitive moments. A custom bracelet, reportedly gifted years earlier, worn close to the wrist, positioned perfectly near the pulse. Was it just jewelry? Almost certainly. But according to two independent tech analysts consulted anonymously by a British broadcaster, that exact style of bracelet is often used as a housing shell for miniaturized audio components. Does that mean Meghan's bracelet was a recording device? No proof has been presented publicly. But the fact that people inside the palace started asking the question at all, that's what matters. Because once doubt enters the room, trust evaporates. The smartwatch theory. Then there's the smartwatch. Several members of the royal household were reportedly puzzled by how often Meghan appeared to adjust her wrist during quiet moments. Again, innocent behavior. Or nervous habit. But in intelligence work, habits are patterns. And patterns raise flags. Modern smartwatches can record audio passively, activate via subtle touch gestures, upload data when near Wi-Fi or cellular networks, mask recording functions as health monitoring. One former MI5 consultant reportedly told a legal team, "You wouldn't need to spy. You just need plausible deniability." And that phrase, plausible deniability, comes up again and again in this story. Inside the palace reaction. At first, palace officials brushed off concerns. No one wanted to believe it. It sounded paranoid. Sensational. But after Tyler Perry's files surfaced, after Oprah's legal team quietly made inquiries, the tone changed. Internal reviews were ordered. Not public investigations. Not accusations. But assessments. According to a former royal aide, staff were asked to reconstruct who was present during key conversations, what devices were allowed, whether any unusual text signatures appeared on internal networks, and whether any private remarks later appeared, verbatim, in public narratives. That last point is critical, because certain phrases that appeared later in media discussions, phrases attributed to unnamed royal insiders, matched word for word with remarks that were supposedly made in private, off-camera moments. Coincidence? Maybe. But palace lawyers don't believe in coincidence. Legal lines, and gray areas. Here's where things get complicated. Recording laws differ wildly between jurisdictions. The UK has strict privacy protections, especially for private conversations. The US varies by state. Some require one-party consent, others two. But recording a conversation involving a head of state, particularly during a state event, that's not just a privacy issue. That's a diplomatic one. Legal analysts consulted by multiple outlets have stressed that intent matters. Recording for personal memory is one thing. Recording for publication, leverage, or negotiation is another. And recording without consent, then storing, labeling, and archiving files, that raises serious questions. Not accusations. Questions. And those questions are now being asked quietly in very powerful rooms. The contradiction that won't go away. Here's the part that keeps tripping people up. Meghan has repeatedly spoken about feeling surveilled, controlled, silenced. She's described palace life as intrusive, monitored, oppressive. So why would someone who resented surveillance so deeply allegedly engage in it herself? That contradiction is what troubles even her former defenders. Tyler Perry reportedly wrestled with this for months. Oprah too. Because if Meghan believed recording was wrong when it was done to her, why was it suddenly acceptable when done by her? Was it fear, self-protection, or something more calculated? The internal alarm. By late 2023, the palace had reportedly updated internal protocols. Nothing dramatic. No public announcements. Just subtle changes. Stricter device restrictions. Increased electronic counter-surveillance sweeps. New rules for proximity during private discussions. Those changes weren't announced, but they were noticed. And to some insiders, they were a tacit admission. Something had spooked them. The cliffhanger. Because if the royal family truly believed there was even a chance that private conversations were recorded, then the next logical question becomes unavoidable. Who helped make it possible? Because technology alone doesn't walk through palace gates. People do. And the next chapter isn't about devices. It's about the hidden hand behind them. The person, or people, who may have opened doors, offered guidance, or quietly looked the other way. And when that name surfaces, it changes the entire story. Who do you trust when the entire world thinks you're lying? That's the question Meghan Markle has posed publicly for years. And if we take her at her word, that she's been misunderstood, misrepresented, and manipulated, then it makes perfect sense that she'd lean on someone close. Someone loyal. Someone who would never betray her. But what happens when that person starts raising eyebrows? What if the one person everyone believed was just a quiet, calming presence might actually have had a more complex role in one of the biggest royal scandals in modern memory? Because whispers are growing louder. And at the center of them, Doria Ragland. Or is it someone else entirely? Because once you follow the money, the devices, and the silent approvals, you end up staring at a name no one ever saw coming. The calm in Meghan's storm. Let's begin with what we know. Doria Ragland has always been seen as Meghan's anchor. Soft-spoken, private, rarely photographed, never seeking attention. Unlike Meghan's estranged father Thomas Markle, who has spilled family drama to every tabloid with a checkbook, Doria has kept quiet, graceful, protective. But in the months leading up to the Queen's funeral, something changed. According to reports from a Montecito insider, Doria began taking more frequent solo meetings with Meghan's legal and PR teams. Unusual, given her typical low profile. She was also spotted at several appointments in Los Angeles related to security and lifestyle consultations, a vague term often used in celebrity circles when dealing with surveillance mitigation or discreet tech services. Was she planning a security upgrade for her daughter? Or something more sophisticated? The curious timeline. Here's what doesn't quite add up. Doria reportedly flew to the UK quietly in September 2022, just days before the Queen's death. Yet no public mention was made. No sightings, no confirmations. But airport staff at Heathrow, according to a leaked travel manifest, logged a private VIP arrival under an alias connected to a California shell company, a shell company tied, through legal paperwork, to one of Meghan's former attorneys. Coincidence? Perhaps. But then there's the pattern. That same alias appears again, this time in a security clearance log connected to St. George's Chapel during the funeral rehearsals. How would someone not officially part of the royal family have access to such a secure area? Someone had to approve it. Or more likely, someone had to look the other way. The enabler theory. Not all allies are active participants. Sometimes, the most dangerous figures are the silent ones. And the theory now being discussed quietly among legal analysts and former palace aides is this. Meghan didn't act alone. She had an enabler. Maybe more than one. Let's break it down. To embed a recording device within royal grounds during an internationally televised funeral, you need precise access timing, technical equipment, legal insulation, media knowledge, and most importantly, deniability. Someone had to handle logistics. Someone had to keep the paper trail clean. And someone had to assure Meghan that if anything went wrong, she'd be protected. That person may have been Doria. Or it may have been someone outside the family entirely. The shadow consultant. In spring 2023, investigative journalists from a UK paper traced payments from one of Meghan's business entities, Sunshine Sacrifice LLC, to a little-known tech fixer based in Santa Monica. This fixer had ties to several crisis PR firms. More importantly, he had previously worked on projects involving wearable surveillance for Hollywood lawsuits and divorce trials. His name? We'll call him Ryan A. Ryan had no visible connection to Meghan, but his company was paid 5 separate consulting fees, each under $9,000, conveniently below mandatory IRS flagging thresholds, just weeks before the Queen's funeral. When confronted by reporters, he claimed he didn't recall working on anything for Meghan Markle. But one former employee, now protected by whistleblower status, alleges Ryan's firm was hired to provide non-traceable wearables and cloud backup support for high-profile clients. In short, discreet recording tech. The Montecito dinner that changed everything. Here's where Doria re-enters the frame. According to a private chef who worked at a Montecito estate in late August 2022, Doria attended a dinner meeting with 2 men who were not friends or family. She did not drink. She brought no phone. And according to the chef's sworn statement, one of the men, believed to be Ryan Ayotte, presented a small velvet box to Doria before leaving. The contents of that box? Unknown. But the chef overheard a single phrase that night. Just one line Doria whispered into her teacup after the men left. She'll know what to do with it. Who was she? And what was it? Legal plausibility or plausible deniability? Here's where the line blurs between suspicion and strategy. If Meghan received covert tech via a third-party intermediary, one technically unaffiliated with her, it grants her something lawyers love: plausible deniability. It allows her to say, under oath, I didn't plant anything. I didn't purchase anything. I didn't record anything illegally. And technically, that could be true. But if the device recorded automatically, if someone else ensured the tech was active, then Meghan doesn't need to press record. She just needs to be present. The question of motive. Why would anyone go to such lengths? Why risk so much? Theories range from Meghan wanting leverage over royal narratives, Doria trying to protect her daughter from palace betrayal, or third-party players seeking content for a future project, possibly an unfiltered, unauthorized follow-up to Harry and Meghan on Netflix. But the most chilling theory? That Meghan wasn't just collecting evidence. She was building an archive, a permanent record, one that could be used at any time for defense, for offense, or for legacy. A digital insurance policy. And Doria? She may have been the courier. The shocking twist. Doria's financial shift. In early 2024, financial auditors in Los Angeles uncovered unusual spikes in Doria Ragland's asset filings. She reported new business interests in holistic health, expanded real estate holdings, and a significant personal investment into a digital lifestyle brand. All after years of modest, stable income. Where did the money come from? One source points to an offshore consulting payout from a media advisory group based in Zurich. A group tied to European documentary licensing. Was Doria profiting from her silence? Or from her participation? We don't know. But the timing raises serious questions. Cliffhanger. Because while the world keeps looking at Meghan, and while the palace prepares for legal fallout, there's someone else watching from the shadows. Someone who knows exactly what happened. Because they were there when it was planned. And now, they're ready to speak. Not for fame, not for money, but because their name just got subpoenaed. Imagine waking up one morning, opening your inbox, and finding a message that simply says, I know what you said. I have the tape. You have 72 hours. No sender. No explanation. Just that gut-wrenching, skin-prickling threat. Now imagine that message was sent not to a politician, not to a Wall Street executive, but to a member of the British royal family. And the person behind it is tied to an underground blackmail operation based out of Beverly Hills. A ring so quietly powerful that it's been laundering celebrity secrets for years. Here's where the story of Meghan Markle's alleged recordings takes an even darker turn. Because if what multiple sources now suggest is true, the recordings weren't just insurance. They weren't just leverage. They became currency. And somewhere along the line, someone cashed them in. The digital marketplace no one talks about. In elite Hollywood circles, information is everything. Secrets, whispers, surveillance. They're not just risky, they're valuable. For years, an off-the-books network of fixers has been operating behind closed doors in Los Angeles. These aren't just paparazzi. These are data brokers, blackmail artists, middlemen for A-listers, agents, lawyers, and sometimes criminals. They don't operate with names. They operate with folders, encrypted folders, each one with a label like divorce_and_. Abortion _case _osh. Guest house cam 2 raw. Crown tapes. Sound familiar? Because now, investigators believe a folder labeled Crown tapes may have originated not from a media server, but from inside a Montecito estate. How the tapes leaked. Let's be clear. There's no hard evidence, yet, that Meghan Markle intentionally handed over private recordings to criminals. But here's what insiders are alleging. Meghan collected or stored private conversations. These files were backed up to a third-party cloud service, managed by an outside consultant. That service had a vulnerability, a backdoor either through human error or by design. Someone accessed the files, and then someone started shopping them around. Not to tabloids, to fixers. Because if you're holding something sensitive, like an unguarded moment between a king and his heir, you don't go to the press. You go underground. You go to the ring. Enter the broker. He's been called many names in court documents, but to insiders, he's simply known as the broker. A well-dressed man in his mid-40s with no social media, no digital footprint, and a list of clients that allegedly includes a billionaire tech founder, a disgraced fashion mogul, 2 Hollywood A-listers currently in very public custody battles, and now, allegedly, someone tied to the Sussex media circle. The broker deals in threats without making threats. He doesn't say, pay me or else. He says, here's what someone else might pay me for this, unless you want to buy the rights. In early 2024, it's believed he circulated a sample of what he claimed were authentic, unfiltered royal audio recordings featuring Meghan Markle and multiple UK royals. The price? $5 million. The client? Unknown. The files? Allegedly verified by 2 separate security experts in Switzerland. The first blackmail attempt. According to leaked legal emails from an international law firm representing a high-profile member of the royal family, an unsanctioned data leak triggered a threat assessment protocol in March 2024. The report didn't name Meghan. It didn't reference Crown tapes. But one section stood out. Subject received direct communication from an encrypted third-party source offering private audio documentation in exchange for silence or cooperation. Translation? They were blackmailed. And the only people who would have had access to those recordings? Someone very close to Meghan. Maybe even Meghan herself. Was it a setup or a betrayal? Here's where things get murky. One theory among LA insiders is that Meghan never intended the tapes to leak. That she stored them, yes, possibly for legal leverage or to protect herself in a future dispute. But someone else accessed them. The consultant? A bitter former staffer? An ambitious assistant? Another theory? That Meghan allowed select parties, lawyers, Netflix reps, Oprah's producers, to listen, but not own. But once a copy existed, it was only a matter of time before someone sold it. The Beverly Hills Vault. One of the most shocking developments in this saga was the discovery of what law enforcement dubbed the Vault, a private secure server found in a gated Beverly Hills home in June 2024. It housed surveillance footage, voice memos, legal contracts, confidential celebrity medical records, and a folder titled sovereign_network.mp4. While no official link has been made to Meghan, the contents of that folder allegedly included timestamps matching her funeral appearance. The FBI became involved. Interpol was notified. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, Montecito was officially on the radar. The silent fallout. So what happened next? Silence. Sudden silence. Meghan canceled appearances. Her Spotify team went dark. Netflix projects were paused. And a senior executive at one of her media partners was abruptly fired. His exit labeled personal. But insiders know better. It was a purge, a cleanup, a frantic effort to shut it down before it exploded. And yet, one tape survived. Despite efforts to bury everything, one audio file allegedly made it out. It's now in the hands of a European journalist. The journalist hasn't published it yet, but in a leaked email to a colleague, they described it as a whispered conversation near the Queen's casket. Meghan is present. She doesn't speak, but you can hear her recording sounds, the vibration, the subtle beeps. And then, Prince William says something devastating. What did he say? We don't know yet. But the journalist also wrote, "It's not what he said that haunts me. It's that she was there, and she never stopped the recording." Cliffhanger. Because now, with the blackmail ring exposed, with the broker in custody, with sovereign_network, MP4-inch under forensic analysis, there's only one person left who knows exactly how the recordings were taken, why they were stored, and who tried to sell them. He's been silent this whole time, but he was there, from the beginning, watching, listening, and soon he's going public. Prince Harry is ready to talk. What does it take to push a king past the point of diplomacy? To transform grief into rage? To make a man known for restraint, measured pauses, handwritten letters, and hopeful olive branches suddenly slam the gates shut? It takes betrayal, not whispered betrayal, not speculation, undeniable betrayal. And when King Charles learned that his mother's funeral had allegedly been used as the backdrop for covert recordings, his reaction wasn't ceremonial. It was personal. And what followed was not just fury. It was something far more dangerous. Strategy. Because when you're a monarch, rage becomes war in silk gloves. The moment he found out, sources inside Clarence's house say the atmosphere on the day Charles received confirmation was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't the press headlines that triggered it. It wasn't even Oprah's quiet withdrawal. It was a phone call. A classified briefing from a joint British intelligence task force working in tandem with private security experts. The verdict? Your Majesty, there is credible evidence to suggest that private conversations involving senior royals, including yourself, may have been captured via unauthorized recording methods. There was silence on the other end of the line. And then Charles reportedly said just 3 words. It was her. The breaking of trust. For all the drama over the years. Megxit, interviews, titles, Netflix. King Charles had always held on to some flicker of hope that things could be repaired. He met with Harry in secret after the Oprah fallout. He allowed Meghan into royal events, even after the Queen's death. He invited them to coronation discussions. He tried. But this felt orchestrated. Not impulsive, not accidental, deliberate, strategic, predatory. Multiple sources say that what angered Charles most wasn't just the existence of the recordings. It was when they were made, during his mother's funeral, during his own rawest, most sacred moment as a son and a monarch, a moment that should have been respected, even by those estranged from the firm. Instead, he was allegedly watched, monitored, logged, and by someone who once stood on the palace balcony. Camilla's reaction. She recorded the Queen. According to a senior aide, Queen Camilla was livid. After decades of surviving scandals, press abuse, and being painted as the villain of Diana's story, Camilla had found her place beside Charles. She had earned her crown, and she trusted the institution. So when she heard the allegations, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She issued a demand. Get her off the guest list. Forever. Camilla reportedly pushed for Meghan to be completely banned from future royal events, regardless of Harry's status. No more invites. No more compromises. No more Markle. And Charles? He agreed. For the first time, he didn't defend Harry's wife. He signed the order. The private letter to Harry. Weeks after the revelations, Charles reportedly sent a private, hand-signed letter to his youngest son. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't angry. It was cold, formal, and it included a single line that sent chills through royal courtiers. Your wife has violated the sanctity of our blood and our legacy. No love, Papa. No olive branch. Just ink, parchment, and finality. The letter went through intermediaries. Harry didn't respond. Not at first. But when he did, it changed everything. The phone call no one expected. Insiders say Harry called his father at 3:17 a.m. London time. From Montecito. He was alone. And for the first time in over a year, he didn't ask for peace. He asked for the truth. Is it really over? Charles's reply? That's up to her. Harry reportedly hung up without another word. But those 5 syllables, that's up to her, set off a chain reaction in Harry's household. Behind closed doors at Buckingham, as Charles's fury simmered into action, Buckingham Palace initiated a quiet reorganization of communications. Several legacy staffers, with long-standing ties to Harry and Meghan, were quietly moved to different departments. Passwords were changed, access to archival footage was revoked, and a new policy was introduced. No royal is to be left alone with mobile devices in private areas unless previously cleared by security. Some insiders dubbed it the Markle Memo. Officially, It doesn't exist. Unofficially, every senior royal knows what it means. Legal moves being considered. Sources suggest King Charles convened a private legal team to explore non-litigious retaliation options. Why not sue? Because a public lawsuit would validate the tape's existence. Instead, the palace is reportedly exploring denial of ceremonial access, revocation of remaining patronages, financial restrictions on royal-linked charities run by or supported by Meghan, blacklisting Meghan from official government events, even abroad. In short, systematic removal from anything even adjacent to the monarchy, a quiet exile, more severe than the first, because this time, there would be no return clause. William's chilling silence. Interestingly, William, often the first to react emotionally, was completely silent. Multiple aides say he issued no statement, no press leak, no meeting request. He didn't want to dignify the betrayal. But privately, he gave a directive of his own. She is not to be spoken of again in my house. That, from the man who once embraced her in the royal box, who defended her to palace staff, who welcomed her into their family with hopeful naivety. That William, gone. And in his place, a future king in lockdown mode. The Queen's final wishes. Betrayed? Perhaps the most heartbreaking element in Charles's fury was the sense that his mother's legacy had been desecrated. According to a source close to the Queen's inner circle, Elizabeth II made it clear in her final months. Let peace be their path, even if it takes time. Charles tried. He waited. But when the funeral itself, the final farewell to the Queen, became a suspected surveillance event, he felt he had failed her. So now, he's not waiting. He's acting. And Meghan? She's been officially marked, not with public condemnation, but with something worse. A royal freeze. Cliffhanger. But while Charles was preparing to slam the gates, Meghan was preparing a move of her own. One so bold, so public, and so scandalous. It would drag everything back into the spotlight. And this time, she wouldn't do it through Oprah or Netflix. She'd do it on her own terms. With an exclusive interview and the first of many tapes. What happens when the future King of England goes silent? When the man known for his diplomacy, his charm, and his protective loyalty finally snaps? Not in public, not in tabloids, but behind closed doors, where power doesn't speak, it acts. Because when Prince William found out what Meghan had allegedly done, when he realized that his late grandmother's final moments might have been recorded without consent, archived, and possibly monetized, something inside him broke. And what followed was not a press release, not a formal investigation. It was something far more final. An ultimatum. The day William found out. It was an overcast afternoon in Windsor when the call came in. William was reviewing paperwork with his aides when one of his most trusted advisors, someone he'd worked with since the air ambulance days, entered the room. He had that look, the kind of expression that precedes death notices or betrayals. He handed William a folder. No words, just a nod. Inside was a report, compiled by MI5 consultants, palace tech advisors, and legal experts, detailing the likelihood that Meghan had secretly captured audio at key royal events, including the Queen's funeral. At first, William didn't react. He just stared, silent. Then he reportedly asked a single question. Did she record my children? That silence from the aide? That was his answer. The storm behind the smile. To the world, William appeared composed in the following days. Smiling at charity events, waving from the car, laughing politely at a school fundraiser. But inside, he was done. With Harry, with Meghan, with apologies. This wasn't about petty squabbles anymore. This was about legacy, about trust, about his children growing up under a digital sort of Damocles, knowing that any private conversation, any vulnerable moment, could be weaponized. William, for the first time in his adult life, made a demand. Not to staff, not to PR, to his father. The confrontation with King Charles. It happened at Balmoral. A quiet breakfast between father and son. The room was cold, but the tension? Ice. William reportedly placed a printed transcript of one of the leaked funeral recordings on the table. Charles looked at it, didn't speak. And then William leaned in and said, "If she's at the coronation, I won't be." Charles didn't flinch, but aides say his hand trembled as he lifted the teacup. It wasn't just about Meghan anymore. It was about succession. If the heir to the throne was threatening to boycott the crowning ceremony of his own father, that wasn't a family dispute. That was a constitutional crisis. The call to Oprah. What happened next shocked even royal aides. William picked up the phone and dialed Oprah Winfrey. Yes, that Oprah. The woman who gave Meghan her first platform. The woman many believe shaped the entire Megxit media narrative. William didn't call to argue. He didn't call to accuse. He called to ask a single, chilling question. Did she tell you she was recording us? Oprah was silent for several seconds. Then she replied. She told me she kept notes. William's tone reportedly shifted. Notes don't have timestamps. Then he hung up. The private crisis meeting with the Archbishop. William didn't stop there. Within 48 hours, he scheduled a private meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, senior palace clergy, and constitutional advisors. The agenda? Not faith. Not grief. Exclusion. William wanted Meghan formally barred from the coronation, state funerals, investitures, jubilee celebrations, any royal ceremony tied to crown or country. A harsh move? Yes, but necessary, in his view. Because he wasn't just protecting the monarchy. He was protecting George, Charlotte, and Louis. 3 children now viewed as future targets for unauthorized media harvesting. And William? He swore they'd never be content. Meghan's reaction. Back in Montecito, word traveled fast. Meghan's team was blindsided. Their PR arm received calls from UK press seeking confirmation of her formal exclusion from upcoming royal events. Her Spotify manager went dark. Netflix producers refused to take her calls. And then, Meghan did what no one expected. She leaned into it. The counter-move, Meghan's interview tease. Meghan's publicist released a cryptic statement. The Duchess of Sussex is preparing to tell her story. In full. No edits. No apologies. Social media erupted. What did she mean? Another docuseries? A podcast? Or something more dangerous? Royal insiders feared the worst. A leak. Not to the press. To the public. And that's exactly what Meghan threatened next. The email that sent panic through the palace. An anonymous royal staffer received a message via Proton Mail. Tell William. If he erases me, I press publish. Attached was a screenshot. A waveform. Audio file. Timestamped. The file name? Inside Windsor Chapel, RAW03.M4. No one knows if the file was real. But that didn't matter. Because in royal warfare, threats are weapons. And William had had enough. The ultimatum. He called Harry directly. No aides. No publicists. Just 2 brothers on a secured line. William didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't ask how the kids were. He just said, choose her. Or choose this family. But you can't have both. Then he hung up. No goodbye. No emotion. Just finality. Because for William, this wasn't about reconciliation. This was about legacy. And the future of the monarchy had no room for someone wearing a wire to a state funeral. Cliffhanger. But what William didn't know was that Meghan had already recorded her next move. Not with a hidden mic. With a camera crew. And a bold new platform that no one in the palace saw coming. An explosive sit-down in America's most controversial newsroom. What would it take for Oprah Winfrey, the queen of composed candor, the architect of America's trust, to finally say, enough? What could possibly make a woman who built a global empire on discretion and dignity suddenly step away from the very person she once defended with everything she had? 2 words, the tape. Not just any tape. The tape from Balmoral. And the moment Oprah heard it, something inside her shifted. She wasn't just disappointed. She wasn't just betrayed. She was horrified. Because Meghan hadn't just crossed a line. She had erased it completely. The beginning of the unraveling. Let's rewind. March 2021. The world watches as Oprah conducts the interview that shatters royal silence. Meghan and Harry, seated under a lush pergola in California sunlight, drop bombshell after bombshell. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. They didn't want him to be a prince. There were concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be. It was dramatic. Devastating. Electrifying. And Oprah? Oprah stood at the epicenter. Calm. Composed. In control. She didn't challenge. She listened. She gave them space. And in doing so, she handed Meghan one of the most powerful platforms in modern media history. That trust was sacred, which is why what happened next, behind the scenes, cut even deeper. The call that changed Oprah's legacy. September 2022. The Queen is gone. The world is in mourning. And Oprah is silent. No follow-up interview. No comment. No statement. Privately, she's distancing herself. At first, it seems like a strategic decision. Let the moment breathe. Don't step into the funeral frenzy. But the real reason? She had already heard something she couldn't unhear. A private call from Tyler Perry. 3 audio files. One of them from inside Westminster Abbey. Another? From Balmoral. And the third? From a quiet conversation between Meghan and a palace staffer that was never meant to be public. Yet somehow ended up transcribed, time-stamped, and cataloged in a file titled monarchy_2022_raw. When Oprah pressed Tyler for more, he hesitated. But eventually, he said the words that would haunt her. She didn't stop, Oprah, not even for the Queen. The Balmoral bombshell. Here's what we now know. At some point before Queen Elizabeth II passed away, Meghan Markle visited Balmoral Castle. While Harry rushed to Scotland amid concerns about the Queen's health, Meghan remained in London. Or so we thought. But according to 2 separate security sources and 1 former palace insider, Meghan may have had brief access to a room in Balmoral just hours before the Queen's passing. A room where a private conversation occurred. One with Camilla, Charles, and a senior aide. One that was never supposed to be recorded. But the voice on the tape? Soft. Mechanical. Almost too perfect. A hidden device. Picking up every word. Every hesitation. Every sigh. And then, clear as crystal, Meghan's voice in the background. Not speaking. Just listening. Oprah's private screening. When Oprah heard the Balmoral tape, she was with 3 people. A legal advisor. A producer. And her longtime friend Gayle King. The room was silent. For 5 minutes, no one said a word. Because what was captured on that